I've seen many people out there asking, so how do you define a woke ideology? Woke actually originated in China. I will explain in a separate video coming up. But I will explain the general concept in a full in this video. And I'm also going to explain what is the matrix. Well, that's what Andrew Tate calls it. I don't really like the name matrix. So let's give it a different name at the start. Since I'm a big Marvel fan, let's call it a Hydra. Because if you can cut off one head and two more will take its place. It's a never-ending vicious cycle. So to start, right now, if you look at all the assets that's floating around the world, it's roughly 464 trillion US dollars. Now that sounds like an unimaginable amount of wealth, right? And you're wondering, oh, how come almost everybody's so broke? Well, it's pretty obvious, right? The top 1% owns over 90% of that. So who are these people? Well, many of the people in the top 1%, it's not necessarily just one person. It's a collective organization. Organizations like BlackRock, like Vanguard, like State Street. They own 89% of the Fortune 500. And as of I'm speaking right now, they're buying everything up in America. So let's say if you want to join the top 1% in the world, so out of 8.1 billion, we're looking at roughly 81 million people. The only way for the top 1% to stay filthy rich, to stay extremely wealthy, for them to control over 90% of all power, to control over 90% of the wealth in this world, they have to keep the other 99% oppressed. Who are these people at the top? And as of right now, if you think, Joe Biden's the one in charge, if you think he's the one that's behind all this printing money, and you see on the US, the dollar note, what do you see on there? It says Federal Reserve, right? Well, the Federal Reserve is actually not owned by the feds. Do you know who owns the Federal Reserve? So we have to go back to Jekyll Island. This is a small island off the coast of Georgia. Let's go back to November 10th of 1910. There were six men: Nielsen Aldrich, A. Piat Andrew, Henry Davidson, Arthur Shelton, Frank Vanderlip, and Paul Warburg. They met at this tiny little island for 21 days in order to write a plan to reform the U.S.'s national banking system. And these six men, they did not admit the meeting until much later in the 1930s. But the plans written during those 3 weeks on Jekyll Island, they laid the foundation for what would eventually become the United States Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve would also become the foundation of the IRS. These are the people who really control the feds. These people lay in the shadows. This is Hydra. Cut off one head, two more will take this place. How did the people like Larry Silverstein, who was dining on top of the World Trade Center every single morning until September 10th, how did he know that next day something would go wrong and it was time for him to go to the doctors for a checkup? What really happened to Jeffrey Epstein? What happened to Vance Foster? How does Bill Gates know so much about AIDS, know so much about pandemics and vaccine research? Surely you must know that Joe Biden is not the one that's in charge. Remember that. This is who is in charge of the feds. It's private investors and bankers. It's donors to the Clinton Foundation, her supporters and her lobbyists. Do you know who came up with the term BRICS? I don't mean a bricklayer. I mean the countries BRICS, like Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa. Do you think it was any of those countries? No. The man who came up with the term over 20 years ago was a man named Jim O'Neill. Jim O'Neill? Does that sound familiar? Goldman Sachs. These are the people that's in charge. Okay, remember this. These are the people behind this woke ideology, behind the Matrix, or what I call Hydra. There was one man who attempted to fight this. He wanted the United States government to take back control of the Federal Reserve. He wanted the United States to take control of the IRS. And in June of 1963, John F. Kennedy signed the Executive Order 11110. There's a snapshot there on the screen. It's quite long, but the general meaning is that basically this executive order would have allowed his administration to take back the U.S. Banking system. But unfortunately, after signing this order, he went to Dallas in November of 1963. He never came back. Do you know what Richard Nixon also did on August 15th, 1971? Look up the speech he made. He made an 18-minute televised speech, right? In which this is when he destroyed the gold standard. He sold these souls to these people, to woke ideology, to Hydra. Do you know what happened right after he destroyed the gold standard in the US? The inflation in the US went from in August of 1971 was 3.4%. By the end of 1971, the inflation in the United States had jumped to 12.2%, 9% increase in a matter of just a few months. So there are four things I want you to remember. Four ways they use the system to keep you really oppressed. Number one, debt equals money. There are many ways to look at it, but I'm just giving out some examples. First of all, there's a common misconception. People think, oh, China has all the money in the world. They're lending out to all these countries, right? But in fact, if you look at the global debt, China is responsible for 15% of the total global debt. And if you divide it by population, China makes up roughly 17.2% of the world's population. So in realistically, China is not really doing much better than the US in terms of a debt to GDP ratio. And as I am making this video right now, roughly 10% of China's population, that's over 100 million people, are still living in extreme poverty. So how do people get trapped into debt? To start, I mentioned this many times before. What do you think of feminism? This is all 100% BS. Ladies, I have to keep bringing up this point. How can you have gender equality? How can you make a man equal to a woman? How can you make XX chromosomes equal to XY chromosomes? So if you really want gender equality, what do you want? Do you want a man entering female sports, female washrooms, female locker rooms? If you want gender equality, you have transgender. You have men that's identifying as women, referring to themselves as real women, while you're being marginalized as a cis woman. Okay, you need to wake up to this reality. And the reason why they're pushing this, well, it's very simple. First of all, you double the tax bracket, right? And what happens is, I've said this before, you double the number of applicants graduating from universities. Now what happens is these top tier jobs, the number of these positions have not changed. This is why the dollar is worth less, because back then when only men were graduating, they had limited candidates to choose from. So they had to pay you a really good salary. They had to give you really good benefits, a really good pension. But now they have twice as many people to choose from. So they could afford to pay you less. They could make you work more. They could decrease your pension. They could take away your benefits, and you have no choice to take that job. Now what happens when you have both genders that's in the workforce? People have less time for relationships, for marriage, to have children. And then what happens, right? You have a population collapse like what we're seeing right now in the West. So the West is forcing to taking immigrants and refugees, right? This is why there are 3 million people making minimum wage in Canada now. Another point that I want to make, women make up over 80% of the consumer spending. Okay, that is a fact. Women also generate 80% of debt. As I mentioned before in my 26-minute video on how my mom went from a successful multi-millionaire to going complete bankrupt. Same with my sister. All the money they made during my mom's peak years of my mom's business, they spent it all. This is why they want the woman to make all the money. Because when a man makes $1 million, he's going to think, you know what? Now I can support a family. I'm going to find a wife. I'm going to start a family. I'm going to have children. I'm going to think about how to make the next million. I'm going to build a generational income. But when a woman makes money, the first thing she thinks of is, let's go shopping. Okay, and this is true for women anywhere in the world, not just Western women. It's the exact same thing in China. That's why they want the matriarchy, right? This is how they trap you into this, right? And they could come up. This is why they wanted to give you all the credit cards, all the line of credit. They can come up to you. Let's say that, hey, look, we'll give you $10,000 in credit card, and we'll give you another $20,000 in line of credit. But look at what happened during 2020, right? And when everything shut down, the government will say, here, have some money. We'll lower the interest rate to 0.25%. But look at what Bank of Canada's interest rate now. It's jumped all the way to 5%, and it's going to increase further. Any extra money that you can make, you can put into the bank. It all goes back to paying off the interest rate, and you're left with nothing. This is what's called the fractional reserve banking. Because think about when you go to the bank, how many people are actually there to deposit money? Almost everybody is trying to take out a loan, to get a credit card, to get approved for some kind of a grant, to get a mortgage, right? To get an equity. Vast majority of the time, the bank has no money. And this is how they generate money, by generating debt, right? And this is why they want to give everybody these credit cards. Think about it. If you go to a grocery store, if you pay cash, right? Let's say if you spend $100 on groceries, the grocery store owner will get $100, right? And it goes directly into his pocket. But if you pay by credit card, especially something like American Express, which charges 4%, if you paid $100 with your American Express, the owner of the grocery store gets $96. And if you repeat the same transaction, right, 25 times, right, $4 times 25, that $100 is gone. Where has it gone? It has gone to the bank. See, printing money is a very dangerous concept. Look at what happened during COVID, right? The US government printed over 6 trillion US dollars. Then look at what happened. Inflation rises to a 40-year high. Do you know what happened to Germany at the end of World War One, when during the Treaty of Versailles? The Allies were completely broke from the war, and because Germany was on the losing side, they were forced to pay amount of close to $1 trillion adjusted for inflation. And Germany had just lost the war. How the hell were they going to come up with $1 trillion? They started printing money like madmen. In 1918, $1 was 4.5 German mark. In 1923, $1 was 4.3 trillion marks. On paydays, workers had to use wheelbarrows to wheel their money out of the bank. And you know what happened? People were getting robbed as they were wheeling out tens and trillions of dollars. But see, the thieves and the robbers, they dump out all the money. They burned them. They didn't give a shit because paper currency became useless. They were robbing them for the wheelbarrow. It got to the point where nobody was using money anymore. People were trading for commodities. You got a box of cigars? I'll give you a case of wine. You got some bottles of wine? I'll trade you for some groceries. That's what people were doing back then. So let's move on to point number 2. Health equals money. What do I mean by that? I mean big pharma. Okay, listen, I was vaccinated. I was forced. I had no choice. I currently live in Canada. I got Moderna, Pfizer, one of each, right? And people keep saying that this is a safe stop, trying to cause a hoax and this and that and propaganda, whatever you want to say it, okay? Listen, I had no choice, okay? My university gave me a notice, says that if I don't get vaccinated, I cannot return to campus for classes. I work for the largest grocery store chain in Canada. I was given a 45 days notice. If I don't get fully vaccinated during the 45 days, I let go from my job. Okay, so I had no option. One of my coworkers, he's ex-Chinese military, 100% healthy in his 40s. He got the AstraZeneca, right, as his first shot. Do you know what happened? He was hospitalized for 2 weeks. Do you know what happened after he was discharged from hospital? His second shot, he had to get Pfizer because Canada banned the AstraZeneca vaccine for causing blood clots. There was already multiple deaths reported in Canada. That is true. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm just saying some of these stuff they do, like, can you really trust them? It seems to be pretty sketchy to me. Do you know what happened after I got fully vaccinated? I became extremely allergic to pets. With every passing day, I'm losing faith in the government and in Big Pharma. I understand some allergies develop with age. Maybe I've just come to that age where I started becoming allergic because I never used to be. I used to live in a house, the room I was renting, the landlord, he had 3 dogs. I played with them every single day, never had any issues. Maybe it's just when I got to the age, when I got close to 30 years old, the allergies started to develop. Or worse, more likely, when I received my COVID vaccines, that maybe something changed in my body. And some of you might say that that is not a big deal. Well, think about this, right? So in the future, let's say if I wanted to have a pet on my own, because my allergies is getting worse, inevitably, right, have to take some kind of allergy medicine. Let's say I will have to take Reactin, right? And you might think, well, it's not a huge deal. Let's say I spend $10 a week, right? So I was 28 when I got fully vaccinated from COVID. Let's say the average life expectancy in Canada for men is roughly 82 years old, right? And so that's 54 years. Think about this. If I had to take Reactin for me to have a pet for the next 54 years, even at $10 a week, right? That's $520 a year. That's over $28,000. And where has the money gone to? That's gone to Big Pharma. See, this is how they trap you inside. You notice how many diagnoses there are nowadays? They keep telling people there's something wrong with them. If you go back 50 years, ADHD was not a thing. Do you know what they did to you back in the day if you told people they had ADHD? Your parents slapped the shit out of you. Then guess what? After they slap the shit out of you, you walk it off. You're fine. Right now, they keep telling people, oh, you have anxiety, you have depression, you have this and you have that. They're constantly forcing you to take these medications, these shots. And God knows what these things do to your body. I mean, just look at people keep saying that the male testosterone has been dropping consistently for decades. Does it have something to do with all of these medications and injections? I'm just stating some facts out there, right? Can you really trust that everything that's been going inside of your body? And another thing, as I mentioned, feminism is related to this point as well. Well, guess what? The cosmetic industry generates $38 billion a year. Right? As I mentioned, in China, in fact, in all of Asia, right? In South Korea, in Japan, in Philippines, India, Indonesia, Pakistan, almost all the Asian girls are obsessed with being white. That's the standard of beauty when I was growing up in China, right? They're obsessed with the Eastern European, the Ukrainian, the Russian, Polish, Hungarian. If you go to the popular bars and nightclubs, they all have these super tall Eastern European models working there. And you see these commercials all over China, these skin whitening cream, how to bleach your skin to make yourself look white, how to give yourself, there's a surgery in South Korea. I call it the Black Dahlia surgery. Many Asian women get this. It's to open up your lip more so it looks like you're always smiling. They get their nose surgery to make themselves look more European. They get the double eyelid surgery. And all of that is the money. They indoctrinate, once again, it's impossible to indoctrinate the alpha male. You can only indoctrinate betas. It's very easy to indoctrinate children and it's very easy to indoctrinate women. So starting from your childhood, you make these Asian women feel very insecure, and you tell them that the only way for you to be beautiful is for you to be white. This is part of the reason why the number one most common interracial marriage worldwide, it's a white male and Asian female. And for many people asking me, how come, what do I do to approach women? How come you haven't had a date in 31 years? That's what I tell you. Maybe part of that is white privilege. A lot of Asian women out there, they don't like Asian men. That's 100% fact, especially if you factor in the height requirement, right? And that's the same worldwide, right? Tall man is preferred everywhere, all over the world. If an Asian woman says, I want a guy that's 6 feet, how many Asian guys do you think are 6 feet? Number three, sex equals money. I have to mention this point once again. It is impossible for an average guy to find a wife, to find a girlfriend, to start a family. This is why we have a population collapse in China, in South Korea, in Japan, and in the West. Did you know that in China, over 70% of men are virgins into their 30s? Do you know what the requirement is for China for you to get married? And this is why marriage rates are at an all-time low and divorce rates are at an all-time high. A woman expect you, they always have a high requirement. It's, the ranges of either 6 feet, maybe 5'11", maybe 6'1", 6'2". How many Asian guys are at that height? Other than the high requirement, they want you to have a house, or in China, it's usually a condo. They typically require a minimum 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, fully furnished, paid off, no mortgage. They expect you to have a car. It cannot just be a Honda Civic. A lot of women out there request at least they want an Audi or maybe a BMW or a Mercedes. They want you to give them a cash gift. Typically, this amount on average in China, I would say is roughly 200,000 renminbi in the Chinese currency. So this roughly translates to $30,000 US as a cash gift to them. Okay, this is real. I'm not making this up. They expect you to spend 3 months of your salary on the wedding ring. They expect the man to pay 100% for the wedding. They expect the man to pay 100% for the honeymoon. This is why marriage rates in China are at an all-time low. This is why over 50% of marriages in China ending in divorce. Ladies, what are you really looking for? Sounds like you just want money. You just want a wedding. I don't think you really want a marriage. Now, some of these standards, they might let it slide, especially as the woman gets older, as they get more desperate, once they're like 30, 32, 34. But the thing is, the minimum, right, that's universal all across China. You have to have a house. It has to be paid off. How the hell is a guy that's, 25, 30, 35-year-old able to get, a condo that's 100% paid off, right? That's 100% dependent on his parents, okay? So this is what I mean by privilege. This is what I mean by a nuclear family. If you grew up in a nuclear family, because during the one-child policy, you have 4 grandparents, 2 parents, and 1 grandchild, right? You have a lot of generational wealth. So what happens is typically they can come up with the money to buy you a condo, a 3-bedroom condo for you to get married. But without the help of your parents, look at me. 90% of my family is all divorced, over 20 divorces in my family. I have nothing to inherit. Unless I become extremely successful on my own, there's no way for me to find a Chinese girl to get married. That's the reality. So what happens to the man that can no longer find girlfriends or get married? This is why the sex industry is the #1 industry in the world. In China, there are just as many prostitutes and strippers as there are in the West, as there are in Colombia, in Venezuela, in Brazil. Obviously, because due to this censorship, you won't be able to see any of this. But what do you want these men to do? Like I said, over 70% of Chinese men are virgins into their 30s. But all the top 1% men, they all have multiple side women. There's a term in China, it's called a 小三. The literal translation is little 3. Literal translation, it just means you're the mistress, okay? See, all the women, all the requirements I've listed, that is a very, very small percentage of men that can meet these requirements. These men, they become lonely, they become depressed, they become incels. What do? They go to the strip club, they pay money to prostitutes, and they start watching online porn. This is how they keep you depressed. This is how they break up the nuclear family. This is how their models are OnlyFans, like Elle Brooks. She can make $1 million a month. 1 million US dollars a month. This is how the porn industry generates over 100 billion US dollars a year. Do you really think there's any positive out of this? Look at how many porn stars and OnlyFans stars have committed suicides after leaving in the industry. Look at how many of them have gone bankrupt. Because like I said, ladies, you need to let the man control the money. I'm not trying to be a misogynist. See, man and woman are built different. When the man makes money, look at all the top 1% men. Tell me how many have been faithful to one woman. Because man, when they make money, none of these guys will be able to control their third leg. They become a 100% dog. That's what they become. They start sleeping around like crazy. Look at Will Chamberlain. Look at Magic Johnson. Look at Charlie Sheen from Two and a Half Men. Look at Russell Brand. Right? Look at Andrew and Tristan Tate. Look at Justin Waller. As soon as a man starts making money, he wants the 18-year-old virgins to suck. I'm sorry, but 99% of rich men are this way. You want that guy, you want the six-figured, tall, good-looking, have have his mansion, have his yacht. And listen, ladies, avoid those guys. Because those guys are gonna cheat. Those guys have options. They will never be faithful to you. Look at Elon Musk. He's got at least 11 kids as of now, right? He's probably going to have at least 10 more by the time he's 60, right? This is what men do when they get rich. See, when the woman gets rich, what happens is you say, oh, let's go shopping. Let's buy the most expensive handbag in the world. Let's buy the most expensive boots in the world. Let's buy the most expensive makeup kit in the world. And let's go on Amazon and buy all these things that I will never ever need and just stash them in the basement and never look at them again after opening up the boxes. So this is how the elite, this is how Hydra, this is how the top 1%, this is how they rob 99% of their wealth. You break up the nuclear family, create the matriarchy. The vast majority of the men cannot find a wife, they cannot find a partner, they cannot find a girlfriend. And so they're forced to spend money at the strip club. They're forced to spend money on pornography. And the women who will make these insane amount of money, they end up spending it all. So there's no generational wealth. And finally, number 4, I believe this is the most important point. War equals money. War is the most profitable business in America. This is how America got so rich during World War I and World War II by mass manufacturing all the weapons and selling them to allies. Look at the United States military budget. It's nearly 1 trillion US dollars. This is where your tax dollars is going, right? Look at the United States military bases around the world. There are 845 as of November 23 and counting. Do you know how many military bases China has around the world? One military base in Djibouti. If you really want to fix the issue, it's time to close down every single one of them. It's not the United States' business to be involved with China and Taiwan. Whatever happens, that's a proxy war. That's for them to resolve. What happens between North and South Korea, that's not the US's business. Whatever happens between Russia and Ukraine, that is not the US's business. But just look at these wars that's been happening recently. Who do you think caused the war between Russia and Ukraine? Okay? It's the United States and NATO. Back in 1990, when the Soviet Union was about to be disbanded, United States Secretary of State James Baker, he met up with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. And at the time, the Soviets, they had 400,000 troops stationed in East Berlin. The Soviet Union and the United States discussed the future plans after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And the United States, along with NATO, made a promise to the Soviet Union that after the dissolution, NATO would never ever expand, not even 1 inch. Not even 1 inch to the east. This is how they got the Soviet Union and Gorbachev to agree to withdraw those 400,000 troops. But look at what NATO has done since then. They've expanded all the way to the Russian borders. They've left them with no choice. Okay? And with Finland joining NATO, it has only made things worse. Okay? And who do you think funds the war? Okay? Look at where Ukraine is getting their money from. Right now, over 50% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 57% wouldn't be able to make rent or mortgage payment if they missed their next paycheck. But how much money has the United States donated to Ukraine? From what I can count, I think we're closing in on 200 billion US dollars, right? And where does Russia get their money? Russia get their money from, well, first of all, their European money from the UK, from France, from Germany, from their Nord Stream pipeline. Whose idea was it to build these pipelines? Whose idea was to build the Nord Stream pipeline too? Ursula von der Leyen. She's 100% delusional. She has wasted hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars for Germany. And Donald Trump tried to warn them. Donald Trump warned Jens Stoltenberg during NATO's meeting. Donald Trump warned Ursula von der Leyen about because they warned Germany that you're going to become 100% reliant on Russia. You're going to become their bitch, right? And where else does Russia get their money? Russia get their money from China. Where does China get their money? Who is the number one trading partner with China? The United States of America. Do you see what's happening? China gets their money from the United States of America. Ukraine gets their money from the United States of America. China gives their money to Russia. UK gives their money to Russia. France and Germany, they give their money to Russia. Both sides of the war are being founded by the United States of America. It's the same thing in Israel and Palestine. If you guys don't think that the United States is obsessed with war, here, I put together a very short list. This is just a very small list of many of the proxy wars that the USA has been involved in since the end of World War II. We have the Korean War. The USA was involved in that. The first Sudanese Civil War. The USA was involved. The Suez Canal crisis in 56 to 57. The United States was involved. The Congo crisis between 1960 to 1965, where the USA went in and kidnapped, brutally murdered their democratically elected leader. This is right before John F. Kennedy was sworn into office. We have the North Yemen Civil War between 62 to 70. The United States was involved in that. We have the Dhofar Rebellion, 62 to 76. The United States was involved in that. The Sand War in 63. The United States was involved in that. The Rhodinian Bush War between 64 to 79. The United States was involved in that. The Dominican Civil War in 65. The United States was involved. The Chadian Civil War. United States was also involved. The Bolivian campaign, United States was involved. The South African border war between 66 to 90, United States was involved every part of the way. The Nigerian Civil War between 67 to 70, the United States military was involved. Operation Condor between 68 to 89, United States was involved. The Al Wadiya War in 69, the United States was involved. Okay. The Yemenite War in 72, the United States was involved. The Angolan Civil War, once again, United States was involved. The Ethiopian Civil War, United States was involved. Lebanese Civil War, 75 to 90, United States military was once again involved. The Western Sahara War, United States was involved. The East Timor occupation, United States was involved. The Shaba One, United States was involved. The Cabinda War, the United States has been involved. The Ogaden War, United States was involved. The Cambodia War, United States was involved. The Vietnam War, United States was involved. The Mozambican Civil War, United States has been involved. Shaba II, United States has been involved. The Chadian-Libyan conflict, United States has been involved. Which country went into Afghanistan back in 2001? Who invaded Iraq in 2003, claiming that there was weapons of mass destruction and killed over 1 million civilians? The last president that wanted to pull the US troops out of Vietnam. The last president that did not want the US to be involved in Congo, in Laos, in Cuba. The last US president that said that he no longer has control of his administration, that he wanted to take the CIA to shatter it into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the wind. Shortly after making that statement, he traveled to Dallas in November of 1963. He never came back. So it starts with generating debt. Debt equals money. Number 2, healthcare equals money. Number 3, sex equals money. Number 4, war equals money. Number 4 is the most important point. It's the most profitable business in America, and I would say it's the most profitable business in the world. So if you have stayed until this point, and if you're wondering why should you care? Well, because I care. I care about the truth. The truth is the most important value we have in life. And in order to search for the truth, that often opposes a threat to power. And in order to find the truth, one usually has to take on a great risk for themselves. The West used to be the most sane, the most just, the most equitable, the most advanced, the best society in the world. But I am watching a civilization falling apart. The government stopped caring about its people. Over 50% of the population is living paycheck to paycheck. We can't secure our own borders. And we're worried about every single border dispute worldwide. The woke left ideology. They want to divide us by vaccination status, by by your political beliefs, by which party you support, by your gender, by your race, by your religion. They want to constantly pit us against each other. They want to do this so that we cannot unite as one to fight the real evil, to wake up to see what's really happening in this world. If you still believe that the West is a democracy, if you still believe that this is a government by the people, of the people, and for the people, then it's time for you to wake up. You flip the coin by not asking what your country can do for you. You ask yourself what you can do and what you're willing to do for your country. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. So, which one is it going to be? The decision's up to you. Thank you guys for staying till the end. I will come back to this point when I talk about how woke ideology originated in China and what is the end goal of this.